Election season is in full swing, not just at the presidential level, but right here in Somerville. 2 of the 4 state legislative incumbents are facing challengers in the September 8th primary. On Thursday, July 21st, I'll be moderating 2 primary election debates hosted by Cambridge Community Television and SCAT TV between incumbent State Senator Pat Jehlen and challenger Cambridge City Councilor Leland Cheung, and then State Representative Tim Toomey and challenger Mike Connolly. Here's an introduction to the candidates from an election profile taped earlier in June at SCAT TV.
So I want to invest in transportation, I want to invest in our communities, I want to invest in job training, but most importantly, I want to invest in education. And we are just now back to 2009 levels of funding for our schools. You know, and the legislature talks about, you know, charter schools pulling money out of the schools. Well, the fund that was set up to reimburse public schools for kids that left for charter schools has been underfunded for the last 5 years. All right, we need to fund our schools adequately if we want them to achieve everything that we want to achieve. And education is the cornerstone of civilization, of our democratic society. We need to invest in universal pre-K. We need to make post-secondary education to our state schools more affordable, like it used to be. We need to have community colleges that prepare kids, prepare young adults for jobs, prepare them to get out into the workforce and make a living. We need to introduce computer science and science, engineering, and math into our high schools so that, you know, when I really hate, you know, when we're attracting all these companies, and I hear a lot of people are saying, well, how do we keep more of the college students who come to school here? I think the question is backwards. I think we should be educating our kids to the point where, you know, we can build our own workforce. When you move a company here, you already have the talent that's grown up here and lived here that can satisfy all of your needs to compete in a global economy. I want to make sure that our kids can have the training and the jobs so that they're not being displaced, but that they're competing in the jobs that we're bringing here.
Let's move on to one more issue that seems to be a central issue here, which is public transportation. Public transportation is going to affect 3 of the communities that you are striving to represent in the Senate.
So we need to invest in the green, we need to invest in transportation. But what's complicating it is we have this massive housing crunch that is, the Green Line is exacerbating. And then coupled with that, we have developers from Chicago coming in, kicking people out of their homes in anticipation of the Green Line being built. You know, if we had done this earlier and we'd grown up around it, we wouldn't have these massive kind of disproportionate effects.
My first job was as a community organizer. I never thought that I was going to be a state senator. I never thought I was going to run for public office. But I wanted to change the world, and so I became a community organizer with migrant farm workers, and I learned so much about poverty that I became convinced that the issue of income inequality is the biggest one we face as a country. And I became convinced that people working together could make a difference. So I still think of myself that way. I still think of myself as an organizer. So everything I do has its roots in the community. And I'm going to give a couple of examples. The biggest change that I've seen in my period of time in the legislature, the biggest social change I've seen has been the movement for equal marriage and now for public accommodations. And both of those things happened in an historic sense relatively fast. And they happened because thousands of people came out of the closet, told their stories, and organized. And that was very exciting. That has been a very exciting process to be part of. Well, the question that's before the voters this fall is to eliminate the cap on spending on charter schools, on the money that comes out of local school budgets that goes to charter schools. So it means that local communities would no longer have control over their school budget. And it means that it also means there's an unlimited amount of money from the state budget that can go to charter schools, because we've promised to help communities make that transition. We're not keeping that promise. But let me just give 2 examples of why it's important to have local control. In Somerville, there was a proposal for a new charter school. We already have the Prospect Hill Academy, but there was a proposal for a new one, which was attractive to many people. But as people in the community learned about it, they realized that if it fulfilled its mission and got enough children to go there, the school department would have to eliminate another school because they would have to cut that much out of their budget.
How many kids who I grew up with, my peers in public housing, and how so many of them never really, had the opportunities that I had. They weren't necessarily able to access higher education or a great job. And so it's really that perspective and that experience that informs my politics and my desire to serve the community. Because as we look out in Somerville and Cambridge, we see tremendous opportunity, but we also see so many people who are looking for direction, who are asking, how do I access that opportunity?
How do you create those opportunities, especially when it comes to affordable housing, transportation, jobs in the district that you're hoping to represent?
Great question. So I think the place to start, I would suggest, would be transportation. Transportation not only is important in its own right for the environment, it also is the connector to jobs. It also has a great impact on our housing market. And I think if you start with things like the MBTA, right now today, we have well over a $7 billion deficit when it comes to our maintenance and our state of good repair backlog. And so I think we need to start by making big investments in things like the MBTA. We have to invest in affordable housing. We have to invest in higher ed. The way forward has to be to raise revenue in a variety of ways.
What would you be in favor of, Mike, in terms of raising that revenue?
I think we have to start to look at the people who can afford to pay more. So certainly the millionaires, certainly higher income earners. I'm not interested in raising revenue on the backs of working people or poor people, but I think we have the #1 inequality here in Massachusetts nationwide.
On the education side, what are you hoping to accomplish, and what are the voters saying?
I think we have to look to every child and make sure that everyone can access all of the early ed, all of the after school programs that we can possibly invest in. And as I mentioned in the intro, I benefited from a Head Start program as a kid, and then what do you know, I had the opportunity to go on to Duke and study computer science. I had the opportunity to go to Boston College Law and become an attorney. And I know for a fact, if it wasn't for that Head Start program, the odds of any of those other things happening would have been 1,000,000 to 1. And so I'm asking the question in this campaign, why is it, 30 plus years after I had that Head Start program, why can't we guarantee all of the early education, all of the after school programs that we could possibly ask for?
Big issue that I'm facing every single day with my staff is affordable housing. People coming into my office, calling, being displaced, being priced out, and how do we try to maintain that diversity and affordability of our communities. It's been the working class families have made some of Cambridge the great cities they are. But as new people, everyone's attracted. Somerville and Cambridge, they're great places to live, to work, and to have recreation. And so people want to come here. So what happens, the housing prices are increased dramatically. Working very closely a lot of times with the Somerville Community Corporations. Right around the corner from us in Washington Street, they're building affordable housing units. They recently acquired the American Legion Post on Glen Street to assist in that. And they've done other projects through St. Polycarp. So one of the issues we've had in Cambridge, we've had some opposition to us because of increased density. And we had a project in Central Square, Mass and Main, which I believe my opponent did oppose. But that was 50 units of affordable housing was going to be in that development. But it's a 17-story building. So it's high, but it's right in Central Square. There's mass transit there. Most of the people are going to be moving into that development, work in the nearby Life Sciences, Kendall Square. So the impact, on the neighborhoods, would we rather have people not buying the homes that are in the neighborhood, the 2 or 3 families, and pricing people out. This way, you build up, have some more density, and 50 units of affordable housing in one building is very important.
And it's not just pricing people out, it's creating jobs, better paying jobs, so they can afford to stay here. Well, how does it shape up over the next year or so if you're successful again in September? How's it going to shape up? I mean, have we got a jobs report in Massachusetts that looks
but the
promising.
unemployment rate is okay, but what I'm concerned about is those kids who graduate from high school not necessarily going to college. There are a lot of, Kendall Square and Summer Square, there are a lot of specific jobs there. But what we all need jobs for kids with vocational education is very, very important. And train them for the manufacturing of as these life sciences now develop these products, that these kids are able to be part of that and trained
The
to
new
into
jo-
those for
the
the
new
no type of
jobs.
jobs. I mean,
Right.
that's very important. So
The debates will take place on Thursday, July 21st, in the Cambridge Community Television Studios, located at 438 Mass Ave, Cambridge, in Central Square. The first debate begins at 6 p.m. The public is invited to this free event, but studio seating is limited to a first-come, first-served basis. Check the SCAT TV and CCTV schedules, or check out the on-demand feature to watch the debates over the next few weeks.